Clara County Library, and the San Jose Public Library Foundation. Each year, Silicon Valley Reads schedules more than 150 events around the Bay Area for meaningful book discussions. IBPW has been collaborating with Silicon Valley Reads to host these discussions for 15 successful years. We had some events planned for March of this year, but as you all know, the pandemic struck. And luckily, we have been able to reschedule and have many of you join us from across the country on this Zoom webinar. This year is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States. In celebration, Silicon Valley Reads chose the theme, Women Making It Happen, for the year 2020, and has selected as its featured book, Alpha Girls, the women upstarts who took on Silicon Valley's male culture and made the deals of a lifetime, by Julian Guthrie, who was formerly a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist for the San Francisco Chronicle. So Alpha Girls tells the story of 4 women, Mary Jane Elmore, Teresia Gao, Sonia Hoel Perkins, and Magdalena Yesel, who rose to prominence in, quote, the cutthroat, high-stakes, male-dominated world of venture capital in Silicon Valley, and helped build some of the foremost companies of our time. These women, juggling work and family, overcame unequal pay, actual punches, betrayals, and the sexist attitudes prevalent in Silicon Valley and in male-dominated industries everywhere. Magdalena Yesel came from Turkey to study electrical engineering at Stanford and founded some of the first companies to commercialize internet access. She helped Mark Benioff build Salesforce. Mary Jane Elmore came from Indiana to Stanford and on to the venture capital firm IVP, where she was one of the first women in the US to make partner, only to be pulled back from the glass ceiling by expectations at home. Teresia Gao, an overachieving first-generation Asian American from a working-class town, helped land and build companies including Facebook and Trulia. Sonia Hoel, a Southerner who became the first woman investing partner of Menlo Ventures, invested in McAfee and Hotmail, among other companies. A personal crisis would turn her into an activist overnight, inspiring her to found an all-women's investment group and a national nonprofit for girls. The South Asian community has its own Alpha Girls. One of them, Vinita Gupta, is speaking with us today, and another, Anu Shukla, on Sunday, September 13th, 2 weeks from now, same time. So let me introduce Vinita to you before we have a conversation. Vinita Gupta is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and was the first Indian American woman to take her company public. She earned a Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Communications from IIT Roorkee in India, a Master's in Electrical Engineering from UCLA, and has been awarded 2 US patents in the field of telecommunications. She co-founded Digital Link Corporation and was the chairperson and CEO for almost 20 years. Since retiring, she enjoys mentoring women entrepreneurs and playing competitive bridge. She's a bridge champion with 3 national titles. She's a critical observer of how we raise girls and has a personal mission to be a change agent, to empower girls to become confident dreamers and aspire to reach their full potential. She attributes the combination of her engineering education with Eastern values and Western ethics to her success in the business world. She has a blogging website, contributes to Huffington Post, and serves on a few charitable boards. Welcome, Vinita Gupta.
Thank you, Raji. I want to welcome the audience on behalf of IPBW. I know everybody is going through a little weird times, and I hope the weird times can be used to individual advantage. And I would like to make this supposedly talk conversational. So Raji and I decided that she will be asking me questions and I will try to respond to them in a conversational way. But welcome and thank you for taking the time.
Wonderful. So, Vinita, the book Alpha Girls tells us about the early years of the four women in the book. Three of them grew up in the US and one in Turkey. Tell us about growing up in India, your family's expectations, and how you came upon the Eastern values that you credit with your success.
I think it's a pertinent thing, and I'll try to reflect on that. I grew up in India in a family, upper middle class family of three girls, and I was the middle one. My mother was a stay-home mom, and my father was an army officer. So my mother was a taskmaster, not my father, but my mother was a taskmaster. And she, whatever her aspirations were, as little girl, none of us knew what to expect, but we wanted to please her. We wanted to rise to her expectation. One day I wasn't studying for my exams when the exams were imminent, and she said, well, if you're not going to study for your exams, you are going to become a housewife. Okay, everybody was a housewife. She was a housewife, but she said that. And from that day, it got stuck in my mind that I would be anything but a housewife, because that is how women or men, for that matter, they try to rise to the expectations of parents. They don't always try to please the parents, but they do try to rise to the expectations of the parents. So I mean, I'm talking of so many years after that, I still remember this sentence of hers that made me who my future self, which I did not know what it was going to be.
Yes, it's so poignant that, even though she was um, a homemaker, a housewife, she didn't want that for you. She didn't want that for her girls. She wanted you to do more things, have other dreams and follow them. So that's actually very moving and, touching that you took that to heart and built your life accordingly. So,
Yeah.
so tell us about these Eastern values. You have talked about the combination of Eastern
Yeah.
values.
The Eastern values are what, in a summary, I would say what Dalai Lama portrays, what he talks about. It is your greater self. You cannot be just a selfish person. And if whatever our aspirations and ambitions we have, if we have a framework of values behind it, Eastern values in my case, because that was the culture I was brought up in, both respecting your parents and uh, respecting your parents, yet being able to push yourself to this. And it reminds me of an incident again. I serve on the board of Sutter Health, which is the second biggest healthcare organization in Northern California, non-university. And there was a luncheon, and there were people, board members from all walks of life. I am the only Indian on the board. So they were talking about, one person over lunch said, oh, my 15-year-old son, when I said this, he rolled his eyes, right? Now, then the people just kind of took off from there, and they were all mostly Americans, and they said, oh yeah, you're just getting introduced to what it is to be parents of teenagers. And everybody added to that thing. And when I said, what can I add? Because that doesn't sit well with me. So I said, the country where I grew up in, we were not allowed to talk back to our parents. We were allowed to respect them, but that's the culture I came from. And there was a lady sitting next to me who was from Texas. She said, exactly, I was raised in the same type of a family. So it is the culture that we know is a good thing. I don't think that we can just surrender it because Americans do it differently. And that's what I mean by Eastern values in some sense.
I understand. Yeah, kind of more of a, you know, the respect to elders is certainly a very
Yeah,
strong
yeah. How
Eastern.
can that be? How can respecting anybody? How can that be bad? Why do you have to roll your eyes in front of your parents? Anyway,
Teenagers, I suppose, having one myself.
yeah,
Eye
yeah.
rolling is part of the teenage, I guess, lifestyle.
It is, but that doesn't make it right. I mean, we can teach them what a better value in certain areas.
Indeed. So, having grown up in India, you came to the US to go to UCLA to get a master's, and then you worked at a couple of companies. So that was in the early 1970s. And tell us what the tech landscape was like. What was hot in tech? What were the technology breakthroughs at the time? That this is a exciting period that you were present for. So tell us about
Yeah.
it.
So you'll hear it over and over from various people that luck has a big role to play in your success. And when I was successful, I never gave luck any uh, I didn't think that it was luck. I thought it was me, my hard work, my intelligence, and all of the above, that I worked for it, which was true, but luck has a big. So I was in an area of telecommunication. Telecommunication in those days meant making phone calls and building whatever takes a phone call from one place to another. But the technology was continued to evolve till today, where telecom, when voice calls became data calls, they became internet, they became high-speed internet, and then the explosion changed the world. And I was sitting right in the middle of that. How lucky can you be? So this is the atmosphere that was there. Now you take internet and you say, well, what apps can I build on that? How can I build marketing programs for internet? How can I? So there are so many things that you can do, or you're doing inventory management, financial resources, salesforce.com, all these companies come up, and the big and the best ones are of course Google, in terms of how it has improved our knowledge, and then comes Facebook and comes Amazon. So these companies are just taking that internet, but I was in the period that the internet was getting enabled, and we were part of that movement. My company was part of that movement, and that is why we became successful, and I was able to take the company public.
Yes, what an amazing time that must have been. So tell us a little more about, you know, how you arrived at the idea on which you wanted to start this company. So there was this exciting milieu of, you know, the internet forming and all this, you know, kind of foundational work being done. And then you were working at the second company after UCLA. And so share with us
Yeah.
what happened, what
So,
went through your
so,
mind?
so the moment has to be right. Moment has to be right from, for me, it was that I was, you know, when I first came and started working, and from earning nothing, I could now make, you know, in those days, 80, 90, $100,000. It seemed like a lot of money, but very soon, just the money is not satisfactory. I started thinking, I'm getting bored. I need to do something different, and I'm not going to be a slave of money. So I did not start the company to make money, but not to be slave of money. And I said, whatever happens, wherever the chips may lie, I'm going to figure out life from then. My biggest worry was not money. My biggest worry was failure. I didn't want to be called a failure. And that is what drove me to do it. So your question, what was the area? When people start companies, it's very few start companies like Mark Zuckerberg came from nowhere, and social media, something that nobody had ever heard of, nobody could do, but he knew the pulse of his teenage cohorts, and he started something which became, he was both smart and lucky, so he did that. I was working on products which were, and what I started my company on were natural extension of what I knew how to do, and my partner. I had a partner, 50% partner in the business. So we both said, oh, we don't know how to raise money. He was an American man. He said, I don't know how to raise money. I said, I don't know how to raise money. And if we did something very big, we would have to raise money. So let's do something we can. And we were overly optimistic about everything, but that's how the idea started. It wasn't something out of the ordinary. It was an ordinary idea with the right market, a market about to explode, or its reincarnation of a first product became the internet product. So the life is, nothing is magic. Nothing is magic. It's a continuous process. And I stuck with the process. I experimented with it. I could have failed, but I succeeded. And I would encourage everybody to look at what joy you are getting out of experimentation. Experimentation in itself is a joy. If you just keep doing what you have been doing, it gets old after a while and you are not having any fun. Now, you can, if my company failed, I won't have had any fun, but I think I lucked out. So here I am, that I feel I have a greater degree of confidence because I was in the right place at the right time and worked very, very, very hard.
The product that your company was founded on, I think our audience, there's probably some people from tech, some from other fields. So tell us in a few sentences what this product was.
Okay. So I was an electronic engineer, which is you take all these transistors and little components, and it's called hardware engineering. So I was from the hardware engineering background, and so was my partner. So we built this product, which were, let me describe. At the time that I started my company, AT&T was the sole phone company where you bought from them the phone set. You couldn't buy a phone set in the market in those days. And they provided the entire end-to-end solution to you, and they could charge any amount of money, and it was very, very expensive. In those days, for example, a phone call, out-of-state phone call during regular business hours would cost something like $4 or $5 a minute. Okay, so it was, when people have monopoly, this is what happens. So at that time, Federal Trade Commission came and they decided to break, there is an antitrust movement going on in the big techs right now, but they came and they broke AT&T's monopoly at the time and split them into different companies. And they said, you cannot do that. So they could not send the end equipment, the middle equipment, and end-to-end solution. They couldn't have, so long distance carriers were created, like now there are Sprint and other carriers who you can subscribe to. Of course, cable companies came later on, but there was a huge shakeup going on. When there is a huge shakeup, there are a lot of opportunities, and there is, if you make a mistake, you are forgiven a little bit more. If it's a highly competitive, developed market where everybody, everybody is trying to sell something cheaper and better, then you're not forgiven if you make mistakes. So our product basically enabled large corporations to buy from AT&T these major pipes, which were the phone lines, digital pipes, and over those digital pipes, they could communicate their computer information, their voice communication information, and eventually these pipes were used to create internet.
Spectacular. So you mentioned the climate at the time with the breaking up of AT&T. That was such a huge thing, and you alluded to today's climate as well. I can't resist asking you this before I go back to your company. What do you think of what's going on right now with all the antitrust movement against the big companies? What are your a few thoughts?
Okay. So this is a very interesting area. It is a new, something very brand new for the regulators, who are the ones who bring, who try to query if there is a monopolistic behavior on part of big techs. And they did not for years realize that the advantage of these big techs was their data. Data was the new oil, as people say. It was what was making them tick. It was that was bringing them revenues because they could advertise, because they had the data for everybody. They know what to show who and keep them engaged on their sites so that people can watch the ads that they get paid for. So it is very important that our regulators understand fully what is going on and try to segment their business so that they are not the only game in town, because as soon as somebody becomes the only game in town, they start raising prices, not honor as much the privacy. They get away with murder. And there is no development of new technologies because nobody can come up. They either buy them. I mean, this is a part of anti-monopolistic behavior that all these companies, they come and they say, oh, this is our competitor, let's buy them. Then we either take their technology and use it and make them big, or we kill the company. They don't say that they're going to kill the company. They don't buy the companies to kill the company. But that, when I was in business, Cisco was doing exactly that in the hardware business. Anybody who developed any product that would fit into them, they would quickly go and buy that company. So the advantage of that for Cisco in those times was that they had a big, huge sales force. So you make a tiny little box, they can sell it through their 2,000 salespeople, and the sales will go up, and you now have you now even own that market. So owning the market is a bad thing in a democratic capitalistic economy, because and an innovative economy. It's bad for innovation. So it must be busted, is how I look at it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clear perspective. So I want to go back to talking about your company and the time when you were running it. So you told us about, how you came upon the idea, the climate at the time. Now, running a company is hard work. And tell us about, how hard it was to raise money, and also, tell us about that. And then I want to ask you about some of the low points when you were running it.
Yeah, raising money is convincing somebody that you are worth it, they can bet on you. So what do you have to always look at yourself from the other person's perspective. It's not just that you can create a spreadsheet and a plan. Venture capitalists, as the book Alpha talks about, they have some knowledge of the market that you're serving, and if there is room for a newcomer in that market, and what is your unique proposition to succeed in that market. But they also look at the eyes of the founders and say, does this person have the ability to twist and turn and change if the market conditions change? And I didn't know all those things when I was raising money. And I was naive, but naiveness is not necessarily bad because you pitch it in a very genuine way. Because what I felt even pitching to my employees or future employees or executives or venture capitalists was my integrity. I think people see it, they buy into it. You don't have to tell them that you're an honest person, they can see through it. And at the time I have to mention this because this is a women's get together. I happened to be pregnant at the time. So, and I had just found out that I was pregnant. So I said, so how do I disclose that to the venture capitalists? Okay, one plan could have been, let them sign the term sheet and then I'll let them know. But I didn't feel right about it. So I was able to relay it to them at the end, before they signed the term sheet, that I have something to share with them. And I was brought up in India where women in those days didn't talk about their pregnancies. You know, it was like, you know, something that you are seen as a pregnant woman, but you never talk about it. So I was a bit shy about talking about my pregnancy. So I asked my husband, I said, would you pick up the phone and call these VCs and tell them? And he did. And they did not blink. They invested in us because I believe they saw the integrity that I did not take their money first and then reveal it, because I wasn't showing, I wasn't, you know, anything. So anyway, all of us have some interesting stories, tidbits to share. And this is something I have always benefited in the US by being more honest than not.
That is great. And I think one of the alpha girls in the book too became pregnant at one point and had a similar struggle even today, right?
Yeah.
Decades later, that is still a concern for women that, you know, what will they say? What will the reaction be? It's not obviously a situation that men face, but
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that,
If a man says that my wife is expecting, they would say, oh, okay. You know, that in fact, it plays in his favor because people say, oh, he will need the money. So he will work harder to make the company successful. So yes, that's the reality.
right, the different standards, the double standards, if you will.
Well, we have to just, you know, you have to play by the rules that people understand. You can't be fighting on all fronts.
Mm-hmm. Choose
Being
your
a woman,
battles.
you have to choose your battles, what battles you're going to fight. And you let go. Most of us let go of small things,
Mm-hmm.
men or women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tell us then, you know, that it's difficult. You were pregnant, you're starting a company, you suddenly become responsible for all the people who are, you know, working with you in this company. What were some of the low points when you were running the company? What were some of the biggest
Yeah.
things weighing on your mind?
Okay. Unlike Alpha Girls, where there was one lady who's worked for a startup. I think it was Teresa, maybe. Others were in venture capital business. So the risk reward is, okay, I'll get fired versus I will lose the investment that I have made in the company. And there is nobody, the buck stops here. When you are founder, CEO of a company, the buck stops here. Failures are your failures and you have to face them. So I'm sorry, I forgot exactly what your question was, what?
Yeah, the low points. What were the
Low point. Okay, so you are running daily in highs and lows. Good news comes, you get energized. Bad news comes, you know, you're down. And then good news comes. As long as there are more good news than bad news, you stay energized. That's human mind. You say, oh, So my low point was, my 6 months after I started the company, my 50% partner decided to quit the company. He couldn't take me anymore. I was too, whatever I was, he just said, I'm gone, I'm going to go. And there was no way to convince him. I knew him well enough. So he quit. Then there was a first customer, the product, when we shipped to them, it happened to be Federal Express, the product didn't work. So that was a low point. Then my partner, he was shipped there to help the customer, and he made the product work, and he was very non-assuming engineering type, and they loved him. And they said, oh, by the way, yeah, everything is working and you can use us as a reference account. So with every bad thing, some good things will come. So stick around for the good things that will come your way also as the bad things do. Life is just a game of probability, I found.
Mhm. Now, one other thought I had as I read the book and thought about you is that, MJ Elmore, who's one of the women in the book, she talked of, working among men mostly. She talked of often being mistaken for an assistant and being asked for coffee
Yeah.
at meetings. So what she would do is she would bring them coffee and then proceed to run her meeting.
Right.
And
That's
they
very
would be
nice.
shocked.
That,
Yes.
that was a presence of mind. I wish I would have that.
And so I wondered then, in your case, how did people react to you as a woman CEO and even more of a minority at that time, a South Asian woman CEO?
Reggie, I would say being a South Asian at the time was an advantage as I look back. Why was it an advantage? It was an advantage because they couldn't place me. If you're a blonde haired, blue eyed, white skinned person, they know who you are, how you were raised, and how you will react to different things. In my case, they had no idea where to place me, how to interact with me. So they just sort of didn't put me down. They didn't put me on pedestal, but they didn't put me down. So I, in fact, I once came, I had had my second kid by that time, and I was at work. There was some important customer visiting, and I went to work just, a few weeks after I had the baby. And because I had the C-section, I was taking it a little easy. But this customer asked me, oh, so, and I would start off the conversation. How can you not start off a conversation saying you just had a baby when you just had a baby, right? So I start the conversation. He said, oh, really? So I said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm an older mother, so I had a C-section. They said, oh, my wife was in bed for 2 months, and here I am 3 weeks, I'm in the, so they gave me, I got a lot of, at least I felt they were more struck and they in awe of and admiring me as opposed to trying to put me down. But I think the combination of the fact that they know that you are the boss in that company is, they knew my name and all that stuff. How would you not know the name of the CEO when you're coming in? So I think I was lucky perhaps, or oblivious. I don't know the difference.
I see. Now, so there are, everyone should ask their questions if they have any in the Q&A section, please. And Shaila and Deepka will bring them up and ask. In the meantime, as people ask their questions in the Q&A, let me ask you another question, Vinita, which is, this is obviously hard work. You worked awfully hard for this. There were tremendous challenges. There were low points. There were disappointments. What were the high points? What kept you going?
Well, the high points were customer is delighted with your product after being disappointed with your product. We could put out a product in 2 months' time, while with my old company, which was a large company, Nortel Network, it used to take them, even the simplest product, it would take them over a year to put in the market. We put it out in 2 months' time. So we were on fast track. A VC was going to come and visit us because they found our little ad for advertising for an engineer, 2-liner ad in the local newspaper. So they were kind of fishing to fund companies. So they called us and I said, who? VC? Oh, I have to behave now. So they said, oh, we will come and visit you, because they wanted to see the company. I said, there's not much of a company. They said, but we want to see your balance sheet and income statement. I said, balance sheet and income statement. I was an engineer, at best an engineering manager, and I'd figured out the rest of the things. And this is like 6 months after we had just started the company. And we opened our office on University Avenue. So there was a Stanford bookstore across the street. I quickly went there, got a book on accounting, and learned how to create a balance sheet. I knew, profit and loss statement is easy. This much money in, this much money out. We didn't have any money coming in beside the investment. So those were the learning was the high point. I was always energized after 1 year, when things were still pretty bad, iffy, I should say, not bad, iffy. I said, I have learned so much in 1 year that I did not learn in 8 years prior to this. So you are energized by every little thing that is going on, and you don't know where it is leading to. It may lead to success or it may not lead to success. But success was less on the mind than making progress.
That is wonderful. The joy of discovery and adventure, even though under pressure.
I would encourage everybody to not forget that there is a joy in exploration, and you don't know where it will lead to. Okay, so do we have questions?
Yes, so let me invite Shaila and Deepika to please ask any questions that have come in.
Sure. Yeah, so I will start, Vinita.
Yeah.
And you have been with IABPW for a long time as a mentor, as a speaker. And that's a question which has come up many, many times. Beside your success in being an entrepreneur, running your company, technology, there's a kind of a little personal note to it. And it says in the book also from page 143, and one of the character advises, it says, and most important, know that the person you marry will influence your career more than anything else. So how is that played out in your life?
Thank you, Deepika, for the question. I think it is a very good question, and the answer is yes, it is important. It is important because we want to feel to some degree supported especially when the kids start arriving on the scene. The work exponentially at home goes up, and women tend to take it upon themselves, and I did the same. So how do you even know who you are going to be when that happens, and how your partner is going to behave in those times? But there is something called adrenaline flowing in you, which keeps you going. But you have to make compromises. You have to be able to say, today I am too tired and I will not be able to put the baby to sleep, or I will not be able to make dinner, and I'm very, very hungry. You have to just state how you feel, and 8 out of 10 times help will come. people respond, spouses respond. So I think women tend to, and I was included in that, and MJ talks about it in the book. I took upon myself way more than what I should have if I look back. I should have been, I still suffer from that. Is it upbringing? I don't know. I think one of the things we all have to do is be able to express ourselves without getting annoyed, without emotions. Just express how you feel. And then the other person knows how you are feeling. Otherwise, sometimes they don't, even though it should be obvious that, you know, you have worked, honey, this many hours. I have worked this. Why should I be coming home every day and making sure that the dinner is on the table and this is on the table? So, I think that's what if I were to look back, what I could have done better, I would say I didn't express myself as often as I should, as clearly as I should. I'm not trying to take away the blame from your spouse if the spouse is insensitive, but there is no point blaming. Nobody responds to a blame. Everybody responds to expression of how you are feeling, or it's high likelihood that they will respond to it.
Very well put. Thank you for that response. Shaila, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, we have been getting quite a few questions from the audience. Vinita, we are thoroughly enjoying your
Shaila? Maybe.
Yeah, so I will ask
Go ahead.
the question from Nikki. And she asked, do you think the government, federal, state, and local, has an important role to play in the tech industry? You mentioned the FCC just now. Conversely, do you think tech entrepreneurs should, in the spirit of Eastern values, work for the good of the common citizen?
Deepika, I missed the last one. That I understood the local and state and federal, but then what did you say after that?
Okay, so Nikki is asking, do you think tech entrepreneurs should, in the spirit of Eastern values, work for the good of the common citizen?
Okay, I think we all at some point realize that if you are not working for the greater good, you can build a business to a point. You have to be able to, if you want to scale your company, and scaling your company means scaling yourself. And for that, you have to continue to evolve yourself and not just become P&L manager, hiring manager, smell and introduce the right product, but you have to hold on to the values of the people who are 3 levels, 4 levels removed from you, and who are going to base they are just trying to listen to and hold on to every word that you utter, and what is the framework in which you utter. So yes, you have to work in the greater framework, but it's very easy to be wrapped in a rat race of how I'm going to compete and be better than, or kill that competition. You have to have a killer instinct. So you are killing competition, and in that greater good comes in. Where does it fit in? How does it fit in? I think if you look at some people who are unable to do that, it's human. I mean, that's not the way it should be. And I think we should, local, state, and federal officials should try to tell them, should police them on those fronts. And, it's hard to drill the message of greater good by the politicians, especially the environment we are in. So I think we have to do it in a logical, rational way. I don't know if it's making sense.
I think it
Yeah,
does. Yeah,
that's good.
I think it does. So next question, I see something. Shaila, are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me?
We cannot hear you, Shaila. So let me, while you figure that out, go ahead and ask a question that showed up in chat from Ritu Jha from Indica News. She asks, who was your biggest motivator, your husband or someone else? 3 important questions that an immigrant woman entrepreneur should follow. So she's looking for you for advice to mentees.
Yeah, thank you, Ritu, for your question. I know Ritu well. So I would say that it is very important for an immigrant person, like who, we need to be mostly who we are. I think it's an important part of being yourself and deriving strength from your own thought process instead of relying or instead of assuming that other people have better thinking. It is not a matter of confidence. It's a matter of thinking that the best you can do is operate from your own intellect. You'll never succeed by operating through somebody else's mind. So this is a second one, and the third one is that do what you feel interests you. If something doesn't interest you, don't bang your head for too long. It doesn't mean that you give up on it. If you think you want to succeed as to become an executive in Facebook, then you should try very hard on that. But if that doesn't sit well with your internal self for whatever reason that you're not cut out for that, then you should think of doing something else, whether you start a company or you work for somebody else. So I think depending on your own applying yourself and say that this is all I can do is think for myself. I don't think I depended on anybody for giving me the motivator. You cannot be leaning on somebody and marching forward. You got to be leaning within, then you stand erect and you march forward.
Those are wonderful words. You cannot be leaning on someone and marching forward. Well said, Vinita.
So Raji, I'll ask another question.
Yeah.
That's from Sunita Sorabji, India West reporter and a friend of IBPW. So I think you partially answered that question. And Sunita is asking what challenges you faced in raising venture capital to start your company. So do you have anything more to add on?
I think the environment today is very different than the environment when I raised venture capital. Right now, there is more money than when I started my company. So if anybody came and knocked on my door, which is what happened to me, I jumped on the opportunity because, they were looking to invest. But today there is so much of venture capital and people are, jockeying for, and they have, one of the things I did have an observation about the Alpha Females book is it's like, if you are holding the money bag, which is what venture capitalists are doing, you have the power. No, entrepreneurs have the power because they're not dependent on anybody. These people with money, their heads spin, they do wrong things. Entrepreneur barely does wrong things. I mean, there are entrepreneurs who have gone astray, but most of the time they are working hard because they have to build something from nothing. These people are getting somebody's money, they're sniffing around and figuring out which company to invest in, which is fabulous, not to be undermined. But I think the power play has to be eliminated from venture capital circuit.
Thank you. Couple more questions. They're coming in. Wonderful. So Vinny Arora of the Aurora Collective asks, how can men be better allies?
Oh, that's a tough one for me. How can men be better allies? I didn't have a problem with men, and I'll tell you why it's surprising to me. Because I was raised in a 3 girls family in India, where you know how the families are. You communicate with your mother. In my case, my mother was the main figure in the house because she told how the house gets run, even though dad was the who brought food on the table. And when I have 2 daughters, so I was raised in a very female environment. And yet, being in engineering college, I was either in UCLA, I was the only girl in the class of 30 students. And when I started working, I was the only woman engineer in that 1,500 people company. So I faced all those things, but it was like, you know, you just get blind to the fact that the men, you are not as friendly. Even to this day, I do find that I'm not able to discuss anything and everything with a man, which I can with a woman. But befriending men, they are not comfortable. Most primarily, they are not comfortable. They were raised in a traditional environment, just like I was raised. So to say that, oh, I'll become a buddy of theirs and go drinking and talk sports and hit the golf balls is not going to happen. You have being different is not bad. You just add value. The good ones will come your way because they will, you know, get attracted to you, not in a romantic way, but, you know, they will see the value in you. And the ones who don't, forget about them. Don't, you know, we don't have to please. We don't have to please men.
Mm-hmm.
If some of them go their way, you know, they were not worth it.
So be it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add to that, you know, when there was the book launch event for the Alpha Girls by Silicon Valley Reads, one of the women VCs, you know, similar question was asked, and they responded to say, number one, hire more women, you know, be better allies by hiring and mentor women, you know. Women are always looking for, you know, there may not yet be as many women role models. And so mentor women, give them an opportunity, show them the way.
Yeah.
So thank you for that response. Let me go to Aisha's question. And she says, what keeps you going now? You are still trying to change the world. What do you do if you feel overwhelmed when change is resisted by others?
Well, I'll tell you that I had to relaunch myself after I retired from Digital Ink. And that was 15 years back. For 10 years almost, I was lost. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Starting another company was not in the cards. I had done it. I didn't have the same energy to launch another company and enthusiasm. I knew what pains there are in starting a new company after 20 years running my company. So after tinkering around with the many different endeavors, I started playing this challenging game of bridge. And it was a game changer for me. It was nothing in terms of high technology. Nobody would, nobody would even understand why I was doing what I was doing. But it makes you so sharp. It makes you think about new things in a different way, because when you are competing, it's a mindfulness. It is getting your adrenaline rightly flowing. You can't be overwhelmed with. So the point I'm making is that you can launch yourself in just about, I didn't have to work for the money that time. And I wasn't anxious to add to my bank balance. That was not a goal for me. So what was a goal? Why, what did I want to do and why? So I did that. Then I started writing. And 5 years after playing bridge, when I won championships, and it was nerve-wracking. It was like appearing in the exams. You show up and you know all these people who have been, they are the Tiger Woods of the bridge world. They come and sit on your table and you want to crawl under the table, but you can't because you can't win by even thinking that. So you just sit and you perform. So performance is, it's like shooting a basket. When you're shooting the basket, you are not, in basketball, you don't get all the shots, but if you get them more often than not, then you are doing pretty well. Even if so, this was a very different. Running a company is a 2-year, 5-year, 6-year thing that you are trying to do. Here you are in the moment and you want to win. So it was an important thing. Then when I started writing, a different world opened up for me. It was like, I have to read, I have to be informed. I need to, before I start writing, I have to have an opinion. And sometimes when I write, I change my opinion. And the joy that I get out of that is just enormous. That I really don't have sane, rational opinions when I start off. And I have to investigate my own internal self while exploring and researching and talking to people. So that has been another new world. Now I am my own CEO. I don't have to get anybody's approval. Before that, I was a CEO of a company where I was seeking approval of the venture capitalists, the investors, the employees, the executive management team, and the customers. Now I'm not seeking approval. I'm only seeking my own approval, and that is the hardest one I find.
You are your own toughest taskmaster.
Yeah, yeah. And there is a joy in that. There is a
Yes.
joy in that. And I don't have grandeur goals, but I never know. I never thought I could play bridge. I never knew I could write. I paint. I used to paint before. I paint now. So, keep going. Keep trying new things. Every time I make my New Year list, I put something that I haven't tried before as a new thing in it. And I don't know why, because it's invigorating. For example, I said, oh, I have to learn how to whistle, how to flip an egg, right? I mean, you see in these hotels, people flipping eggs. I don't know how to flip an egg. I said, am I too old to learn to flip an egg? No. So, these are little things I push myself. And then to top it all, I decided I was going to get a scooter and ride a scooter in San Francisco. And lo and behold, I had a bad accident and I was flat on the ground without a helmet and 3 weeks in the hospitals. But, so be it. So
My
be it.
goodness.
I'm still there. So there is a risk, there is a reward. You go with both.
I love it. These are great stories. Well, we have time for one more question. And Rupal has asked, it's an interesting question. What role do you think entrepreneurs should play in creating social justice? And so as I'm thinking of it, it could be at the product level, what you're building. It could be in terms of the hiring level, who you hire. It could be many things. So I'll invite you to respond as you see fit. What role do you think entrepreneurs should play?
So given the issues of lack of women in high technology, I would say that should be our mission, how to help change the company, how they view women applicants. Women applicants don't even get a fair shake in the interview process. Their resumes get rejected. It has been proven that if a male name is there, it gets picked more often than a female name is there in technology space. So I asked myself, I said, what am I trying to accomplish? What is my what do I really strive for? I want to be able to help women in whether they are 2 or 2,000, I don't care. If we can help other women in a genuine way by lifting them up, not by giving them the shoulder to cry on, I think that is. Now, can we change the racial bias issues? I would like to. I, as a writer, try to write on those subjects and explore. So it depends upon where you are in your career, which subject you can impact and you should impact. That doesn't mean that you don't care about other subjects. That just means that right now is not the right time for you to focus on it, because you wouldn't be able to do much. You don't change the product strategy of a company because there is racial discrimination. Black Lives Matter, you just, you can only make so much of an impact, is how I think about these issues.
Thank you so much. I could speak with you, and I know we would all love to listen to you for a few more hours, but our time is up.
Yeah.
And so let me say a huge thank you, Vinita Gupta, for all the wonderful ideas and perspectives you have shared with us. Very inspiring and very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you to all attendees for joining, and please join IBPW again in 2 weeks on Sunday, September 13th, same time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Bring your cup of tea for a conversation between Shaila Sohoni and another alpha girl, Anu Shukla, who's a serial entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Rewards Pay. So thank you again. Please stay safe and have a wonderful evening.